This video was originally supposed to be about episode 6 as a whole, analyzing everything going on, particularly fans' mental decline, and thinking about where the show will go from here. But then I remembered both Apple and Magnet got screen time that followed my agenda, and I couldn't think about anything else. So I'm sorry to disappoint, but Mihalina's talking about DVD Apple and now Magnet Fury again, this time with worse editing and no mic because I'm abroad. I've always glazed Animation Epic for writing DPD the way they do, but Brian Koch just straight up shot me with this episode. I was in despair watching this episode because of everything, but the characters that stuck with me the most were Apple and Magnet, which I'm pretty sure I'm completely alone in. I mean, come on, out of everything that happened, you're focused on Apple and Magnet? Yes I am. And I'm ashamed of it, but just hear me out. I'm gonna start off with Magnet, seeing as she's 1, actually relevant to the season as she is competing, and 2, there are solid DPD-isms for her in the episode, unlike Apple, who is in this video for different reasons. Before I really get into Magnet, though, I think it would be good to actually get into why I think Magnet has DPD, because I haven't actually gone into details about her traits in the same way I have for Apple. Let's make this quick. 1. Magnet only chooses to join the game after others express a want for her to join, or by popular demand, as she puts it. That's not to say she didn't want to participate. It's more of her needing the yes to join. 2. It's implied Magnet was supposed to have another half, like a pepper to her salt, or salt to her pepper, depending on who she's meant to be. But obviously, she doesn't have one. And if you're programmed with having another person around you in mind, that's gonna fuck you up. So, she has a reason for development. 3. The way Magnet talks about the attention celebrities get makes her sound almost uncomfortable with how much positive attention she gets. Like she's under a lot of pressure. Does she feel like she doesn't deserve it? Or does she feel like she needs to make up for the attention somehow? However, 4. When Pepper shows she dislikes or is uncomfortable with Magnet, she freaks out, which is influenced by the fact she's surrounded by positive attention, the DPD need for approval, and the fact that she's missing her other half. After this point, she starts being kind of really reliant on her. Pepper could be Magnet's DP? 5. She tries to suck up / get Pepper's approval so hard. My best piece of evidence is a scene that got a lot of people to dislike Magnet, aka the team naming scene. Magnet tries to make it really obvious that she loves Pepper's idea, which ends up with her shouting it out instead of letting Pepper announce her own idea, just to show how much she approves of Pepper's idea. This act seems to be one she makes to get Pepper to like her, but it only ends up achieving the opposite effect. 6. She follows Pepper in the mansion despite being told not to. The way she says, "I didn't follow you," screams DPD incompetence to me. It feels like she's saying, "Oh, I misunderstood your instruction. How silly of me. How can you trust me to lead the others now? Well, I've heard that, or she's making an excuse to not look weird for not wanting to be separated from Pepper. 7. She drags out the Marsh-Apple sleepover as much as she can, something Apple also tries to do, because they both yearn for connection and friendship. This is how codependent Magpul can still win. And finally, 8 leads us to episode 6. Now, some of my points from before seem a little reachy, but I'm confident, or as confident as I can be, about the stuff in episode 6, because the stuff we see, specifically Magnet's interaction with Pepper in the theater, feels very real to me. Like anxieties I and many others have had coming true. Let me explain. So, the scene we get between Magnet and Pepper probably wouldn't happen without her apparently canon ADHD. The thing with Magnet is that she says the wrong thing a lot of the time, something I can also relate to. Asking Pepper if she's playing hard to get doesn't help her case, and only makes Pepper mistrust her intentions even further. A quick note, when Pepper storms off, Magnet almost immediately turns in her seat as if she's about to follow her, which further confirms she has a problem with being without Pepper, and is obviously leading into her desperately trying to fix things between them. A character chasing after another character, while knowing this is a risky action because said character is mad at them, sounds familiar. Anyways, when we get back to them, Magnet is, as expected, trying to save face, which leads to a very important statement from Pepper for the DPD Magnet argument.
Everyone else falls for your blatant pandering, but I'm not getting fooled by your cheap tricks!
The word choice here immediately stuck out to me. Blatant pandering. Now, when Pepper says this, she means that she thinks Magnet is fake, but I don't actually think this is what the writers want you to think. Her pandering is just another symptom. Rejection sensitivity and an innate need for approval are symptoms of DPD, which lead to a lot of extreme people-pleasing behaviors. We haven't seen Magnet do this too much, but this line implies it happens, and with Pepper choosing to describe her behavior as pandering, and with what we've seen of Magnet so far, we can gather that her sucking up is a very verbal compliment/praise-based thing. She dishes out what she wants in return, which kind of reflects the kind of people-pleasing behaviors Apple presents, if you think about it. I don't know. So yeah, Pepper pretty much confirms Magnet displays DPD behaviors, which she seems to perceive as selfish. Pretty big revelation and sign pointing towards DPD Magnet as it is. And then we get to the rest of the scene.
I need to be able to function alone.
I think I understand. So you hate me.
Oh, you're so manipulative!
No, I'm not putting on a show here, Pepper. I just care how you feel.
A show? Well, if they want a show, we'll give them a show!
I helped!
There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, Pepper's saying she needs to be able to function on her own. This probably means absolutely nothing for Magnet and the DPD Magnet argument, but it is something Magnet needs to be able to do. Though she comes off as pretty selfish, she's very much focused on other people. I mean, based on episode 2, we can tell she's very socially proficient, knowing a lot about others. And, as we've seen on multiple occasions, clings onto Pepper hard. Second of all, Magnet jumps to a huge conclusion here. All Pepper has said here is that she's been a follower all of her life, and she doesn't want her actions dictated by other people. Despite her not alluding to this whatsoever, Magnet takes this as Pepper saying that she hates her. Now, I don't think this is the case for every person with DPD, but making assumptions like these and catastrophizing is something that happens a lot. Hell, for me it happens all the time. Someone will make a vaguely negative statement, which vaguely includes me, and I will come to the conclusion that this person hates me and is going to abandon me. So you can probably guess how I felt when Magnet said this. Third of all, Pepper calls Magnet manipulative for this, which Magnet reacts to in pretty obvious panic. Statements like the ones Magnet made can very often be misinterpreted as attempts at guilt tripping. I mean, just look at how OSC Twitter reacted to fans saying, "I'm sorry I lived." But Magnet isn't trying to guilt trip Pepper. This is a belief she seems to genuinely hold, and this belief isn't completely unfounded. Pepper obviously doesn't hold a very high opinion of Magnet. Fourth of all, look who shows up in the background while Magnet is panicking about the manipulation accusation. Not only is Apple another character with obvious DPD coding, but she's another character who's had her DPD traits misinterpreted as manipulation. Her clinginess towards Marsh and general Marsh centricism was turned into simple acts of manipulation and building trust by Bo. But she wasn't manipulating. She, like Magnet, just cared about how Marsh felt. Magnet's current situation is paralleling Apple's. And finally, Magnet telling Pepper that she's being genuine and not putting on a show strikes Pepper with an idea for the challenge, which she seems very eager to share with the class. Hearing this makes Magnet instantly switch from panicked to ecstatic. She indirectly got approval, and that is exciting! Magnet has been good, Magnet has been useful! And for someone with the terrified of giving their own input out of fear of rejection disorder, this is big. And this bit of approval is definitely a lot more impactful for Magnet, considering her fear of rejection just got her accused of being manipulative. This was another line that hit close to home. The sheer excitement in her voice about the idea of being useful to someone for once is just so real to me. Giving someone an idea that they like, even a little, is like crack to me, because I'm convinced that I'm useless and all of my thoughts and opinions are shit. For someone who I value or look up to approve of something I say is huge, and also surprising. That gasp from Magnet, really heightens how I feel about the genuineness of the DPD rep. So that's pretty much all we have of Magnet for this episode. There is her attempting to approach Pepper, only to end up walking away during the musical number, but I fear I will break if I think about that too hard. Instead, let's move on to Apple. When it comes to emotions, Apple is a pretty expressive person. As if prior appearances weren't proof enough of this, we got Apple bouncing off the walls in episode 5, and an exaggeratedly emotive Apple in the second door short. So the contrast between Apple in this episode and the episode prior is jarring and concerning, but also pretty reasonable when taking her past into account and what is currently going on. There are two things about Apple that have been pretty well established. She has abandonment issues, and she's kinda immature. These two traits would, naturally, not mix well with the circumstances she and Marsh are currently in. The moving away situation is something that was pretty much designed to break her. There is a lot of nuance and complexity to it, which would already be hard for her to grapple with without Marsh and Fan arguing about these things. You can see she's pretty uncomfortable with their back and forth. She seems particularly disturbed by the "are we all tainted?" question from Fan. But the worst part of it all for her would be that she has to leave a vast majority of her friends behind, and given the fact she has major abandonment issues, and the fact that said abandonment issues stemmed from being left behind on an island, it makes sense that she'd get worked up about it. In leaving the island, Apple would essentially be subjecting the ghost to her own trauma. How would she be able to live with that? These worries are enhanced by the fact that she knows Knife specifically isn't taking this well at all, and that leaving someone behind for your own benefit would be a selfish act. And Apple is pretty notorious for people-pleasing and prioritizing everyone but herself. As Fan points out, the ghosts can't be hurt, and she and Marsh would only be putting themselves at risk if they stayed. And Apple knows that, but she doesn't care about that. The mansion is their home, the ghosts are their friends. She'd feel awful if she and Marsh were forced to leave them. She remains as a background character for the rest of the argument in the hospital. After she has her say, she stays looking subdued for the rest of the episode. Her most expressive moments seem to involve other people, looking upset on Marsh's behalf and contemplative when Fan asks the tainted question. The lack of emotion is probably a mix of having to process everything that's happening, the abandoning my friends part probably being the one she thinks about the most, and her disassociating. The disassociating thing is not a connection I made, by the way. I really just thought she was lost in her own thoughts. But it was pointed out a lot by friends on Tumblr, and yeah, that does seem to be what's going on with how unresponsive and sidelined she seems to be. About the sidelined thing, actually, I've touched upon how her concerns in the argument center on how the ghost will feel, her sidelining her own feelings, as she's known to do, but there's also her not getting a proper goodbye from the ghosts, to our knowledge, and Test Tube asking Apple about Bo and Doe being okay instead of her. That moment hurt, by the way. As if Apple isn't everyone else centric enough, she's being asked about how others are feeling and not being checked in on herself. Fucking ouch? Have we not thought about how that'll affect her mental health? Have we not thought about how all of this will affect her mental health? I feel like her disassociating is just the beginning of something worse. Consider all the circumstances of the inanimate island escape, and major aspects of Apple's past and behaviors, including the ones she's displayed this episode. Something like this is definitely going to revert the progress she's made in regards to her mental state and dependency. I've said a few times on various platforms that Apple felt like she was in remission this season. Well, now I feel like that's going to change. The part of the musical number in which Apple comforts Marsh is already ringing some alarm bells for me. It doesn't seem like much. Like, Marsh is taking this badly, obviously, and Apple is Marsh's friend. Of course she's going to do something to cheer her up. But all I can think of when I see that hug is Apple's desperate attempts to keep Marshmallow by her side in Season 2. That DPD desperation is probably going to come back. Apple will latch onto Marshmallow to make up for the emptiness losing the ghosts would bring, and make sure Marsh is happy. She's going to prioritize how Marsh feels. She's going to obsess over Marsh sticking around. She's going to feel selfish. Or something like that. Initially, I didn't think Apple was going to be super relevant this season, but after this episode, a Marsh-Apple arc surrounding a decline in Apple's mental health and the return of her DPD traits feels pretty likely. The confirmation of DPD Apple theory feels a lot more likely now, too. But that might just be me. To followers of mine on any platform, I'm sorry you're constantly being subjected to only this specific subject in regards to Apple. I have loads of other thoughts about her, I promise. I would just, really appreciate if someone asked about DPD Apple theory during a Q&A. Yeah, that's all the thoughts I have for now. I loved episode 6, and I hope to one day be able to make a video centered on it in its entirety, because there is a lot to unpack. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, despite the worst editing, and have a good day.